I wasn't even going to comment on your glasses today, but
I thank you for not saying anything. I can still read it without them. Not today, but
okay.
Some days I can. Welcome back to Pasteurize. We're kicking into 2 Kings. Michael is not here today. He's with youth camp down in Andrews, North Carolina, so you can pray for those guys. But that's all right. We'll carry on without him. And so then we kick off 2 Kings. Elijah confronts the king and his commanders is kind of the title of this section, at least to begin with.
Yep, some miraculous things happen here. The king is like, hey, I want to go seek a message from Beelzebub.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that name means, it means Lord of the Flies. And I was looking up the context of this whole thing, and some people think that this was a deliberate misspelling of Beelzebul, which means Prince of Baal.
Yeah.
Which is just like a major diss.
Okay, so if it's intentional, it's hilarious.
It is hilarious if it's intentional. People writing this down are like, we're not even going to spell his name right.
Well, like when somebody over there reads this, they'll get a crack at it.
Yep.
I don't know.
So anyway,
maybe this is what God wanted to write. So don't even give him the right name. Give him. We learned some stuff about Elijah here that you didn't know, that he was a hairy man.
Yeah.
I didn't know before this. I'm like, I don't know how I pictured him. I just don't know if I pictured him as a hairy man. But now I'm thinking Esau. He met you and he was hairy and had a leather belt tied around his waist. King said, oh, that's Elijah.
Yeah, immediately knew.
Yeah. Oh.
So, yeah, they go to summon him and Elijah's like, no, I'm not going. And then summons fire to kill them all.
Yeah.
Second general goes. Elijah does the same thing. Fire kills them all.
So these are groups of 50s.
Right.
So we're up to 100 dead now.
Yep. And then the third group of 50 comes, and this guy's smart. He's like, don't kill me. Please spare my life.
Everything I read, kind of goes back to Cool Hand Luke for me. Don't beat me, boss. That's my boiled nuts in my yard.
Yeah.
And so he does. He comes and approaches it properly and humble and gets some compassion. And so Elijah goes with him.
Mm-hmm. And then tells the king himself. The main point of this story is that God protects his anointed, and also God is about his own name. Yeah, don't go around to seek Beelzebul.
Right.
Or Beelzebub in this case.
And so Elijah says, hey, you're going to die. And verse 17, he died. I love sometimes we're just like, hey, this is it.
Yeah, this stuff is just very, very matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much we can really say more than this is what happened. And
I'm sure the dryness is not supposed to be humorous, but sometimes for me
it kind of is.
You're going to die. So he died. It's like, well, I like that, it's kind of funny to me.
It's just straight to the point.
So in the second year of the reign of King Jehoram, this is verse 17 still, son of Jehoshaphat, over second year of the reign of King Jehoram, son of Jehoshaphat over Judah. Okay, that's one thing there. Ahaziah's brother, Jehoram, replaced him as king of Israel because he had no son. Okay, so this one died. And so I don't know if you guys are keeping up with the names. If you're not, then there's something wrong with you. Yeah. This is easy. I mean,
it's so easy that people had to go online and make charts about it.
That's right. In fact, let me look at mine real quick just to make sure that, I'm giving it to you guys straight. Yeah, there it is. So Ahaziah is dead, and he has a son, Joram, that's going to take over, but he's not the only one named Joram. So if you're getting those confused, then okay, we allow that at this point.
Right, yeah.
So Joram, Jehoram, it's the same person. So you just spelled differently in two different places. Yeah, so here's what's interesting, and this is going to be a problem a little bit later. You're going to find out that there's a passage over here that says that Jehoshaphat's still king, and this passage says that Jehoram, Jehoshaphat's son, is king. And so let me see, this is a 3:1, I think, where it goes to chapter 3, verse 1.
Okay.
So we're kind of doing a Bible study now. Y'all bear with me. So chapter 3, verse 1, the 18th year of King Jehoshaphat's reign over Judah, Ahab's son Jehoram became king over Israel in Samaria. So we thought Jehoshaphat's son Jehoram was king. Now verse 1 of chapter 3 says Jehoshaphat's still king. So what do we do with that? Well, it is confusing, but we're going to run into it again in chapter 8. There's yet an additional problem. Here's what happened. It was Jehoshaphat, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I like it though.
Yeah.
And Ahab, they formed an alliance, right?
Right.
And so they were going to go take over Ramoth Gilead. I think was one of the cities that they were going to try to take back from Syria. And
Right.
so this was one of this is an event that's coming up. Before, and no, that was behind us now. That was in 22 of 1 Kings, chapter 22 of 1 Kings.
Yep.
Before they went on that campaign, Jehoshaphat named his son Jehoram as co-regent in the southern kingdom. And so there was two of them. He was still king, but his son was also co-king. So how could this guy become king when his son was king and he was still king? Because they were both reigning at the time. And so that went on for, and the math works out when you get to chapter 8. The math works out at in the 5th year and the next. I mean, we'll get there and you'll see it. But
actually, yeah, that makes sense because in chapter 8 I was confused.
Yeah, there is confusion, but it does factor out once you. Yeah, so Jehoshaphat reigned for a total of 24 years. His son became like a co-reigner somewhere around the 16th year, and there's some squishiness there around the 16th year. Then in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat, Jehoram became king of Israel. And so that was the 2nd year of Jehoshaphat's son's co-regent and the 18th year of Jehoshaphat's reign. And so both was true. 2 Jehorams at the same time, different kingdoms. All right, so back then to verse 17, that's what's going on. So if you got confused later on, then we're trying to just straighten that out for you. There was a co-regent of Jehoshaphat's son reigned with him for a few years there.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep, no worries.
Yeah, that was wild.
That's why I'm here right now. So now the next scene is God's going to take Elijah to heaven. And it's a whole chapter of this kind of building up.
Right, yeah. So Elisha and Elijah are kind of going together, and Elijah's like, no, don't go with me. And Elisha's like, I'm going to come with you. Yeah. And it almost is like he's kind of like making a joke about it because Elisha says, hey, I want a double portion of what you have from the Spirit of God.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
Elijah's like, well, if you ever see me depart, then may it be.
Yeah. That's how you'll know you're getting it.
Yeah. And next thing you know, these chariots of fire pull up, sweep Elijah away.
And so Elisha's response to these people that are telling him, hey, he's going to take your master away today. He's like, shut up.
Yeah.
I was like, I know, shut up, man.
Yeah.
It's like, it does really get the evidence that we get here. It's like, and then it just keeps happening. Like, dude, I know, shut up. The point is, I don't know why he feels
right.
that
I don't
way
know, like, why do we have to be hush about this?
Yeah, it's not a secret. Obviously, they all know it.
Yeah.
And so Elijah's like, stay here. It's like, no, not doing that. And,
yeah. Well, I read Elijah saying, if you see me get taken up, it's like, when pigs fly.
Yeah.
And God's like,
yeah.
I'll show you.
Yeah.
So, he gets taken up. Very famous story. Chariots of fire pull up and he gets swept away. And
only the second person in the history of mankind to escape without death.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love it. Every now and then, God just kind of hits the pause button for somebody.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? The curse ain't going to get you. And I was like, that's wild to me.
Yeah.
Because it got everybody.
Well, I think if you think about his, prophetic career, it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
People weren't listening to him. And he, obviously we read about him being discouraged. And for him to trust in the Lord, to know that the Lord is still good, even though that everything around him is chaotic and Israel's not changing their ways. And he kind of realizes that. And now he has Elisha to kind of pass the torch on to. For God to just be like, you know what, I'm going to give you one good thing, and it's that you will never have to see death. That's beautiful.
Well, and this goes all the way back to his discouragement chapter where, he's like, God, I'm done.
Right.
Yeah, let's just come get me now. And there was fear in that too. If we go back and read it, there was fear that was part of that process whenever he was thinking that way, which tends to be the situation for us. But, and yet God... This is the conclusion of that. God is going to take him. And it's like, okay, right. I'll come get you. It's like a kid calling a parent. It's like, man, I'm done with this. Hey, can you come get me? And I was like, yeah, I'll come get you. But, he says, but first you got to do a few things, right? Go anoint this guy, go anoint this guy, get this in place, take care of a few things here. And then I'll come pick you up. And totally did. Came and got him.
It is like dad coming pick you up from school when you're
hop in.
and you're done.
Yeah, this is it.
It's beautiful because Elisha, he immediately starts doing signs and wonders. Just like he takes Elijah's cloak and hits the water with it and crosses the Jordan on dry land. And, every time we've seen that, it's meant, hey, we're we're doing something big for the Lord. And so I see it as like, this is God showing Elisha that now he's commissioned. Now you're going to be a prophet and you're going to take Elijah's place.
Right. Well, and so now he comes back without Elijah, and the prophets there at the Prophet Guild in Jericho say, hey, let's go find him. Let's go look for him at least. And he's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. I don't think you will find him. And they're like, no, we're got to go. This is Elijah. We can't not. And see, they said they begged him so bad that it got embarrassing. He's like, all right, go.
Right.
And then they came back like, we didn't find him. It's like, yeah.
I told you not to go.
Yeah, saw that coming. But, here's what's interesting, though. You get down to verse 19 of chapter 2. It says, the men of the city said to Elisha, look, the city has a good reputation, as a master can see. A good location, sorry, not a good location. But the water is bad, and the land doesn't produce crops. And Elisha said, get me a new jar and put some salt in it. And they got it, and he poured out in the springs, threw salt in it. Then he said, this is what the Lord said, I've purified this water. It will... I went too far, guys.
Oh, man.
It will no longer cause death or fail to produce crops. And so the water has been pure to this very day. Interesting read, only because we know back in 1 Kings, the guy that built Jericho lost 2 sons there.
Right.
And I'm thinking, okay, was the water bad? The water was bad. And how many other people did it kill? We don't know. But obviously it caused death. They knew this about the place. And now it doesn't. So, if you guys ever traveling, go get you some water in Jericho.
It's still pure to this very day.
I'd drink it.
There's actually a few places in here that say, to this very day.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, actually, they were thinking to the very day that they wrote this.
It, right. But it could still be to this day.
It could still be to this day.
Especially for something like this, when God makes it pure, it's pure, right?
Right.
And so he went up to Bethel, and this is a unique story where the young boys were making fun of him, of his bald head.
Yeah.
And it was like, old Baldy.
Right.
Now we got mountains called Old Baldy. Go up, old Baldy. And so he turned around and saw them, called God's judgment down on them, and 2 female bears came out of the woods and ripped 42 of the boys. How many kids were there?
I don't know, but 42 of them doesn't seem like it was all of them.
Christmas. This is a whole herd of kids. And ripped 42 of them to pieces. Like, well, that's just...
So Elisha has authority from the Lord.
Yeah.
This is what we get from this.
Yeah.
But also, we learned he's bald, and Elijah was hairy. So we're getting some physical descriptions.
So, the viewers at home are probably reading this thinking, well, that feels aggressive. Maybe an overreaction. But it wasn't his reaction. He called for judgment. He didn't tell God what to do.
Right.
And so at some point, God's God. And so here's what you do know after that. If you were living in that time frame, who you ain't going to be making fun of is Elisha from then on, right?
Yep.
That's going to definitely change the scale a little bit. It's like, you know what? Let's don't say that. Let's don't make fun of him. And so, for all the times I picked on Michael for, his thinning hair, I read the story and it's like, well, I'm glad he's not Elisha.
Right, yeah. I'm glad he's not calling down judgment.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
We'd all be eaten by bears.
But they make fun of me too. Don't you let them kid you. It's the words I use. Sometimes it's just the accent.
I wasn't even going to comment on your glasses today, but
I thank you for not saying anything. Well,
these words are getting kind of small.
Yeah. Somebody messed with my Bible over the night.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. I can still read it without them. Not today, but
okay.
Some days I can. Not today.
Yep.
Okay, 18th year Jehoshaphat's reign over Judah. Ahab, son Jehoram, became king over Israel. Again, since we just saw that a minute ago, it was also the 2nd year of Jehoshaphat's son's rule.
Right. Yep.
There.
So Jehoshaphat here in this little section is again being an ally to the northern kingdom.
Yep.
Ahab's son Jehoram, or Joram, whichever you prefer. So again, he does the same thing that he did in with Ahab. Hey, we need to seek a prophet from the Lord if we're gonna go to war against Moab. And I think this is really interesting because he says, Joram, I don't respect you.
That's it. Yeah.
If it wasn't for King Jehoshaphat here, I wouldn't pay attention or acknowledge you. But instead, I'm going to give you what you've asked for because of King Jehoshaphat. And he asked for a musician to play music. And this is cool because he's like, I need the music for the Spirit to energize me. And I feel this.
Oh boy! Oh, music pastor, hold back on this. There it is.
So the truth is, you don't have to have music every time to hear a word from the Lord, but sometimes having music really does help you understand what the Lord is saying, and so that's why we put scripture to melody, why we write songs, and why we can remember theology better when it comes to music, because melodies they do something. I mean, psychologically. Yep. And so for this, I mean, Elijah's in here. He's like, he's having church. So he gets a musician. He sings out, and tells them what to do. I don't remember all the details of that.
In there, didn't he?
Right. It didn't say.
He's like, Best part of the podcast today, right there. That's good. That's going to be your high point.
Anyway, he does tell them all what to do.
It says, yep.
They
dig some ditches.
And I just wrote down in the margin here, the Lord is faithful to his people. And in this case, through Jehoshaphat and his alliance with northern Israel, they succeeded.
Yeah.
And it was because God is faithful not only to Judah, but also to the northern part of Israel. It says later on that,
continues.
he didn't wipe them out because he made a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yep.
And so
that's right.
We still see God is sovereign over it.
And even in the midst of their idolatry, he's still taking care of them.
Right.
And that's just his faithfulness.
Yeah.
Consistently. You see it over and over in this our lives too. Even in their least faithful chapters, God is still no less faithful.
Yeah. Actually, like personally, when I mess up and do things wrong, I really am. I'm hard on myself. I'm like, I shouldn't have done this. This is not who I am. If I'm a follower of Christ, this is not how we act.
Right. Yeah.
But I am encouraged by these kinds of instances where God, in the midst of our disaster and chaos, he's still faithful to us, and his love is still steadfast, and we're secure in that.
I mean, we're always going to be encouraged by it because he's always the same in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
His character has not changed. So they defeat Moab, right? They're striking them down. They're tearing down their cities, and they've stopped up all the springs, chopped down all the productive trees, and then they end up Kir Hareseth. This is verse 25.
Yep.
And the king of Moab is there and realizes he's losing the battle. He takes 700 swordsmen. They try to break through. It's like, us and 700, we're going to do this thing. We're going to get them. And they didn't. They fell. And so I guess he gets back inside at some point. It's like he didn't die. But then verse 27, and this is a turning point. And so what's what you think about it? He took his firstborn son, who was to succeed him as king, and offered him up as a burnt sacrifice on the wall. There was an outburst of divine anger against Israel, so they broke off the attack and returned to their homeland. I don't know what to do with that.
Wait, so when I read this as the king of Moab took and offered his...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm confused about the anger against Israel then.
Me too.
All right. Just making sure we were on the same page.
I think God didn't like it so bad he's mad at everybody. I don't know. It was just such an atrocious event. I think it stopped everything in its tracks.
Yeah.
And so for me, this goes back to the idea that God is not about human sacrifice. And so people are like, oh yeah, God of the Old Testament told Abraham to, and they'll go back to that. But no, he
never did.
He never did, and God never let him, because God is not about human sacrifice. And even back to Jephthah, again, God is not about human sacrifice. And so this is just one more piece of that puzzle for those who perhaps are confused about it. Never has that been part of the plan. He didn't even want the idolaters and the other nations that, that is not something that he's okay with.
Well, this was the point of driving out all the other nations in the Promised Land, because if you didn't, then you'd be, indoctrinated with all their stuff, and then you'd be a part of this.
Yep. And so we're about to go through several chapters of just the events of the life of Elisha. And so this guy, definitely had a double portion.
Yeah, I think if you actually go through and count the miracles of Elijah and Elisha, it is exactly double.
Yeah.
And the way that they recorded it.
Well, the first one is a widowed person who is destitute, and the creditor is going to come take her children. for payment, because you could do that. You could enslave people
Right.
in order to earn what they owe you. And to avoid that, Elisha tells her to go borrow as many jars as you can and start pouring oil in them. The oil's not going to run out. We've seen this before,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
And then go sell that and pay your creditor, and
The whole community was bringing her jars.
Yeah.
I mean, and until she ran out of jars, she had enough oil to fill them all. Yep. And then the next one, there's a
Shunammite woman. right?
yeah. So she and her husband have this little place that people can stay, grab a meal, and so they knew that Elisha was coming by, so they made a room for him. And Elisha's like, "What can I do for you? And, I can put a good word in with the king or anything." And the commander of the army was the other one, and basically she was like, "No, I don't need anything."
Well, wasn't it her servant that told him? It was like,
Oh
it's,
yeah, it might have been.
Oh
Yeah. Gehazi replied, "She has no son, and her husband is old."
yeah, that's it.
So Elisha was like, "You'll have a son this time next year."
Yeah, don't lie to me. He said, don't be doing that now. Don't mess with me. I mean,
I'm so
hear
glad that they said stuff like that even back then.
I mean, this is straight out of North Carolina. I'm sure. Of
Right.
It. Like, yo, man, don't be
You pulling my
that.
leg?
Yeah, you pulling my leg. Yeah, not to be confused with the finger.
I just took a sip of coffee. I'll spit it all out.
So
He grows up and then he gets sick and basically passes out in the field, and he's dead.
Yeah.
So they call Elisha back, and he comes quickly, and they find him on the bed, and he basically the way I read this was kind of interesting. He breathed over him, I think is what it says.
Gave him some mouth to mouth.
Right. That's what I was wondering. Did he actually resuscitate him? Anyway, he came back to life. So
Yeah.
Elisha through the Lord, brought this boy back to life. And so that's, similar to what Elijah had done as well. So in my margin for this story, I wrote, God gives life and he sustains life.
Yeah.
Because he gave the life to the boy by allowing his mom to get pregnant. And then when he died, brought him back to life and sustained his life.
Well, and so the takeaway, further expanded is that God wants us to trust Him, and so all these stories are designed to draw us to trust God. And for every story like this, there's thousands of people died, right?
Right.
And they're not in here because these are designed to bring us to a conclusion that God is our security.
Right.
And whether it's life or death, God is still who we have to trust.
The next miracle speaks to me.
Some death in the pot.
Yeah. Someone made some really terrible food, and Elisha was like, "We can make that better."
That's exactly how that went down. Yeah. That tastes like death.
Right, yeah. Apparently, they picked some poisonous herbs and put in there. They should not have done that, but yep.
And so the cure is some flour.
Right.
Stuff,
I guess.
Again, this
it has to be miraculous.
It
because,
has to be miraculous because
not-
if you try that at home, it doesn't work out so well.
yeah, don't put poisonous berries in your soup and then
With
throw
some
some flour
flour.
in
Yeah,
and
this
hope
is-
that's going to work out.
If your name's not Elisha, then this ain't your jam.
Yep.
Just don't do it. All
Yep.
right.
And then he feeds 100 people. For this, I was really thinking oh, wow. Jesus really showing up the miracles when he's feeding 5,000 people compared to Elisha feeding 100. And then Elijah basically providing food for the widow and her son, until the famine ends. I wrote that Jesus is greater than Elisha and Elisha is greater than Elijah.
Yeah.
And just God continues to raise the bar over and over and over again. The more people he
Which is in such contrast to what's going on currently in the nation of Israel.
know.
Because with each king, he did more evil than the king before him.
Right.
More evil, and that just continues to happen. So the bar continues to move down as
and
the
for the
nation
prophets
progresses.
it goes up.
Yeah, that's right. Until, Jesus gets here and it's like,
Right.
okay.
Well, I think that is also we talk about Jesus being the perfect prophet, priest, and king, and from where we are here in history, the kings are terrible.
Oof.
Like no king has been good enough to save Israel, and they don't get reunited again for a long time.
1948.
Right.
So a long, long, long time.
Right. And so, obviously no political power. The prophets are good and they preach well, but it's still not enough to turn the hearts of the people. And, the priesthood, we see where that goes.
Travesty.
Yeah. So Jesus really came and fulfilled all of that. And I think that's what I look to when I look at, where we're at in 2 Kings. Like, wow, this is just a chaotic mess that can only be fixed by one perfect person who is God himself.
So we get to chapter 5. One of my favorite stories is the man named Naaman. I was like, his name was Naaman. It's like you just can't make this stuff up.
And he dipped and he dipped and he dipped.
Yes, he did all that. And so if you grew up in the southern region, you might have remembered that song from Sunday school and the motions that went with it. I like it. I mean, he's somebody that's not from Israel. This is a Syrian who has no lot in the matter whatsoever. There's no dog in the fight, and he is basically the Syria has been an enemy of Israel for most of the history that we're reading. There's a few moments in there where they're copacetic, but still at arm's length. And so he's got this servant that tells him about the prophet Elisha, and so he goes to king of Syria, probably Ben-Hadad of one of the Ben-Hadads, and gets a letter, goes to Israel. And now the king of Israel thought, this guy is looking for a fight. He's sent this high-ranking official here with a skin disease and wants me to heal him. Who am I? And so he said he tore his clothes and said, "My God, can I kill or restore life?" And so certainly he's just looking for an excuse for a fight.
I want to know the cultural context of how that implied that he was like, we're going to war.
It was like, hey, heal me. And the king's like, I can't. So he's thinking,
so if I can't heal you, then you're going to just go to war with us.
So it's just one more reason for them to have an issue, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think everything was just so tenuous that time frame anyway. It's like every house was a deck of cards.
Right.
And so the wind blows just at least a little bit of direction, they end up in war. And so, I mean, it took nothing. Like, okay, well, if you can't help me, then I'm just going to come take over. All right. Anyway, Naaman's up talking with Elisha and tells him to dip. Does he even talk with Elisha? No, Elisha's not a messenger.
Yeah, it was very offensive. Apparently,
it was. I mean, this is extra.
Elisha's not even going to meet him face to face.
And this is high-ranking official, so he's got that to overcome in his life right now. This is some pride built up because he is a somebody,
right?
And for Elisha to not even come out and address him, that's demeaning,
right?
And so he goes away angry. And somebody speaks some sense into him. Man, I'm telling you, you cannot overvalue good friend, somebody that will actually just speak truth to you. And so if you're watching at home, and have somebody in your life that can speak a word of truth to you that you can hear, somebody that cares about you, and you can trust them to just give you sound reasoning, because sometimes we get in our emotions and we don't see things so clearly. And this person said, look, if he had told you to do some great thing, you'd have done it. How much easier just go dip in his water? And he's like, you know what? I hear you. And so he went and he dipped and he dipped and he dipped. And he
7 times.
And he came out clean. Smooth as a young child. And he was healed.
How do we say that in the South?
Smooth as a baby's bottom. Well, and so, the sad part of this is Gehazi, the servants of Elisha, greed set in on him. Here's a rich man who offered him a lot of stuff. They took nothing. He's like, he's thinking in his head, we should have took something. I mean, we're over here basically hand to mouth, and we could use a little help. And so he goes without asking and gets some things from Naaman, and he also gets a skin disease.
Right. Well, Elisha said he was there. So, Gehazi was even like...
Oh, he lied about it. Where'd you go? How you go nowhere? I was there in spirit. I saw what you did. Saw it with my own 2 eyes. It is sad. And so, Elisha tells him, because you've done this, his disease is now your disease.
Right. I think it's contrastive of Naaman realizing that he can't, buy his own healing. And then Gehazi is like, well, we should get something for it.
Right.
It takes out the trust aspect of God. And so, Elisha and Gehazi have to rely on the Lord for all of their needs, just as Elijah was. And we saw that, even the birds were feeding them. Yeah. And so
we're so easily corrupted by money.
Right.
I mean, it's just one day you're doing fine. The next day it's like, I could probably do a little this, a little that. But And this is what happened. The gifts of God are not for sale. We know that.
Right.
And it should not be the stuff that we barter with either. So it's not only can you not buy it, but those who have it should not be abusing it in order to gain from it.
Right.
And so that's the tough part too. He has to trust God to take care of him. All right. Now he makes the axe head float.
Because someone dropped it and they borrowed it and they're like, oh man, I got to return it. And Elisha's like, just look for it right there.
Yeah, there's a branch in, it floats up. Like, grab it. Next, he defeats an entire Syrian army.
This is interesting because he leads them, blind, and they're kind of confused. And then they're in the middle of Samaria, and the king of Israel's like, "Oh, so we can take them."
Yeah.
And Elisha's like, "No, you can't take them. This isn't. You didn't fight this battle."
Yeah.
So they all get a meal and they go home.
Hilarious. But there was no more raiding parties. Now they still had some invasions of the king came down to fight, but there was no more raiding parties after that. And so it was a turning point for some of their behavior, at least in Syria.
Right. Yeah, because if you read raiding parties as invasions, then the next verse in verse 24,
he sent his entire army,
right? And attacked.
All right. So this is a different program.
Yep.
Here's what's amazing. So they besieged Samaria. That was the capital city of the northern kingdom.
Right.
And the food supply ran out. And this is a horrible story. And so they had been in the old days when you lay siege, you'd basically build something around the city so nobody could get in and out. And so they couldn't go out and do their fields, get to their flocks, anything. And so they'll hold up. And after time, whatever supplies they have in the city run out. And so this is what we're finding right here. Their supplies have run out. And the siege had been so long that a donkey's head was selling for 80 shekels of silver. That's about 2 pounds of silver. Then here it is. You ready? A quarter of a cob of dove's droppings for 5 shekels of silver. Now, if you're reading the NIV at home, it's going to translate that. It's actually going to mistranslate that. It's it's not that. It's the only one that says a pod of seed. So NIV is the only one that says a pod of seed.
They're trying to be nice about it.
Clean it up, right? Now, I suppose there was seed in the dove's poop, right?
There probably was.
Yeah. But that's not what the scripture. Every other translation translates it as some type of bird dropping, excrement, dung. And so a cob, we could go back and discuss the value of that. It's a measurement that's equivalent sometimes to as much as 6 eggs. But that's a lot of bird poop. But a lot of translators estimate it to be a cup, maybe an 8-ounce cup of bird poop. I mean, things got to be bad. That's what you're buying for a meal.
Well, I mean, not to mention that you're not supposed to eat donkey according to the law. So
I mean, right. I can't imagine the law being okay with bird poop either, right?
Right.
It's that's certainly uncanny.
Yeah. So they're at the lowest of the low.
Well, and it doesn't stop there, and so now we've run into probably one of the worst stories in all of Scripture, where these two ladies are having an argument, and ask for the king to help them. Where he says, "What can I do? I can't help you. What's your issue?" And so they tell him, like, "Hey, we had an agreement. On this day, we would kill and cook my son, and we would eat him." And we did. And then on the appointed day, we would kill and cook her son and eat him, but she hid her son so that we couldn't eat him. And he tears his clothes. I mean, how do you fix this? I mean, it's too far gone. Yeah. He tears his clothes and mourns over this. This is it could not get no worse. This is the worst. This is the bottom. Human sacrifice, cannibalism. It doesn't get any worse than this. And so he's angry, and he puts it on to Elisha. It's like, look, I'm gonna kill him. It says that look, the Lord is responsible for this disaster. And
that's so interesting. And I don't know if you are at a pausing point, but I do want to talk about that, because this is not even the worst of the worst in the Northern Kingdom's history. Like they get worse than this before, the Assyrians come in and take over and end up actually exiling them.
Right.
And so, God is still long suffering in the fact that he's allowing them time to repent. And I think we see some of that turning point with Jehu later on.
Yep.
But wow, this is extremely terrible. And the way that, Israel is living, walking in the antithesis of God's commands, and then putting it back on God, saying that he did this.
Yeah. And that's something.
Yeah. Which he did, but in response
Yeah.
to the way that they're living.
Well, I mean, this is not new. We've seen this information before where, Ahab calls to Elijah's like, you're the
Right.
problem
It's the
here.
same
It's like,
thing.
no, you're the problem.
So, yeah,
Their
anyway, sorry to
perspective is
interrupt the
flawed.
story.
No, that
I
was
just
it.
had
That's
a
it.
thought.
So they're to kill him. He's like, listen, you guys should chill out for a minute. Tomorrow, see ya. And again, I may actually have these measurements in the bulletin on Sunday. I've got them on my computer. It's a lot. It's like a lot. A seah of finely milled flour will sell for a shekel. That's basically nothing. I mean, if you're buying bird poop for 5 shekels,
Yeah.
and you buy a field full of flour for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate tomorrow. And the king's right-hand man said, "Look, that's not even possible. If the Lord rained barley today, it would not be enough to make this true." And Elijah said, "It is true. You're going to see it, but you're not going to eat any of it."
Those are the worst words that man will ever hear.
Oh, it's terrible. 4 men sitting at the gate, and they got a skin disease. Like, look, we're dying. If we stay here, we're going to die. We can go to Syria and just, see if they kill us or not. If they don't, then we live. And if they do, then we were going to die anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they go to the Syrian camp and find everybody gone and everything left there. And here's what's amazing. They go into a tent, and everybody's gone, and there's food there. So they sit down and have a meal.
Yeah.
This is before all of us like, this is all right, we're just chilling and eating, and they get done. They loot that tent and go hide the stuff. Then they go into the second tent, and they're looting that and eating that stuff. And then they're like, you know what? This ain't right. We should probably go tell everybody else what's going on here, and or we're going to be punished even more so. So come on, let's go and inform the royal palace. So they went and they told them, and they sent some people out to investigate this matter. And the investigators came back with reality. Hey, no, these people left, and we found their clothes and everything strung out through the desert. They ran for their lives because God had caused them to hear the sound of an approaching army, raiding people. It sounded like chariots coming. And so they lost their minds, and they took off, left everything there. And so now Israel has all of their stuff at their disposal.
And it's plenty.
And so word got out. People took off running out the gate to get something to eat. This guy who says there's no way that God could do this is sitting at the gate, and they ran him over, trampled him to death. And so he saw it happen, but he didn't get any of it. Chapter 8.
Yep. Here we have the Shunammite woman again.
Yep. She had left because Elisha had told her to leave because there's going to be a famine, right?
Right.
And so now she's coming back, and it's amazing that the Gehazi is in the middle of informing the king of her story when she walks up. And he's like, well, there she is.
Right.
this is what I was telling you about.
Yep.
And so the king gives her back everything
that she owned.
that she owned prior to that. And even the produce that her field had produced while she was gone, which is, every now and then this.
I'm surprised they didn't eat it.
Yeah, they probably did.
This is just what it was worth.
At that
maybe.
point, they had a lot of excess because they took all the Syrian stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, give her some food. And so he gets sick.
Who?
Ben-Hadad.
Oh, yeah. That's in, chapter 8.
We're still in 8.
He goes and seeks Elisha, and he's like, tell him that he's going to get better, but he's not going to get better.
I mean, but did he?
So,
Tell him that he will surely recover. The next day, Hazael took a piece of cloth, dipped it in water, and spread it over Ben-Hadad's face until he died.
right. That's not what Elisha's told him to tell him.
Yeah, it's confusing, isn't it?
Yep.
So, I mean, obviously Elisha knows what's happening because he tells him, hey,
Yep.
you're going to be king and you're terrible. I mean, he started crying because he was able to see what all he was going to do to Israel.
Right. That's just
Go kill their young men with swords, smash their children to bits, and rip open their pregnant women. Man, this is going to be a bad dude.
Yep. Joram.
Yeah, another Joram. Or is it the same Joram?
No, this is King of Judah Joram.
Okay.
Well, same Joram.
Jehoshaphat's Joram.
Right. Yep. And he was pretty bad because he married Ahab's daughter
Yep.
and did evil in the sight of the Lord.
Cannot tell my kids too much. It's, who you marry is going to affect the rest of your life so tremendously. You cannot trust yourself for that decision.
Ahaziah. This is Judah's Ahaziah because there was an Ahaziah in Israel. That was Ahab's son, Ahaziah.
Yeah, so this guy also His mother was Athaliah, which was the granddaughter of Omri, so the daughter of Jehu, not daughter, the daughter of Ahab. Sorry.
Yep.
I'm gonna get these stuff right here in a minute.
It's just like, yeah, everything kind of intermingled here.
Yep.
And she was bad.
She was bad. Everything that came out of the house of Omri was bad. Israel king and Judah king are fighting together against Syria.
Yes.
And the Israel king gets wounded, goes to Jezreel. We're done away with names at this point. And so, Judah king decides he's going to come down and visit him. Now, we get to chapter 9, which introduces Elisha coming to do a thing, or sending somebody to do a thing. And the thing is to anoint Jehu to be the new king. Which is strange. He's sitting there. He's one of the military leaders. He's with his friends. He's like, hey, I got a message for you. Come inside. He anoints him. And this is what the Lord God of Israel has said. I have designated you as king over the Lord's people. You will destroy the family of your master Ahab. I will get revenge against Jezebel for the shed blood of my servants and the prophets, and for the shed blood of all the Lord's servants. Ahab's entire family will die. I will cut off every last male belonging to Ahab in Israel, including even the weak and incapacitated. We've read this before.
Yep.
And I will make Ahab's dynasty like one of those that's gone before.
Right.
And dogs will devour Jezebel on the plot of ground in Jezreel, and she will not be buried. And then he opened the door and he ran away. They're like, what did he tell you? He said, it's nothing.
Right.
You know those types, they just always say something. They're like, no, tell us what he said. And they said, all right, he said, I'm king now.
And they're like, oh.
Yeah. So they jump into action, throw their coats down, declare him king, and this thing's afoot.
Jehu was pretty violent.
Oh, my goodness. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Like, of all the kings of Israel, this guy was my favorite.
He heard the word of the Lord and really obeyed it in terms of killing all of Ahab's family.
So he took off. He's headed to Jezreel, right? That's where they are?
Yep.
And he's going to kill the king.
The man was wild at chariot driving.
And so this is where you see it. It's over in verse, 20. Like they're seeing from a distance coming. It's like, and that first chariot man looks like Jehu. He's driving recklessly. I mean, he must have really been getting after it. Yeah. They send somebody to try to talk to him to come back. I don't know. That whole thing was weird. But
yeah, it is a little weird.
Each time somebody gets to him, was like, shut up and get in line.
I'm trying to remember how he killed everybody.
Well, so the kings come out to meet him, and Joram says, everything all right? And it's like, how can everything be all right as long as your mother Jezebel promotes idolatry and pagan practices? And
yep, that's right.
And Joram screams out to Ahaz, that's a trap! That's a trap! And he turns around to take off, and
he shoots him with an arrow.
And Jehu shoots him with an arrow, kills him, and then he chases down Ahaziah, the king of the southern kingdom, Judah, and kills him, or wounds him, and he runs off and dies. He dies somewhere else, but yeah.
So yeah, Jezebel, dolls herself up, leans out the window, and is like, "Is everything all right?" Zimri, murderer of the master.
Oh yeah, she knows it ain't all right.
Right. Yep. And so Jehu's like, "Who's with me?" And then the eunuchs throw Jezebel down because they're with him, and then he runs her over.
This is part of, some of the favorite stuff I've read in this week's stuff. He runs over with his chariot, then he goes inside and has a meal. Talk about Cole's like, what we got for lunch? There's blood all on the horses and on the chariot, and he just killed a herd of people. I was like, what? We got something here to eat. And then they're eating. It's like, I guess we should probably bury her. She was a daughter of a king.
But the dogs had licked up most of her body and
they go outside and they lift their hands.
Yep. And her head, I think.
And her head, maybe?
Her skull, yeah. But the skull, feet, and palms of her hands.
That's it.
So the word of the Lord had come to fruition there. That the dogs would lick her up.
We thought Jehu was after it. These dogs were really after it. God had them sitting just around the corner.
Yeah, like who did let the dogs out here?
3, 2, 1, eat them. I don't know if it went that fast how you couldn't have heard it outside.
Yeah.
All right, so he wipes out Ahab's family. He doesn't stop there. He goes back and kills all of them. There are 70 sons in Samaria. He kills them all.
They all die.
And then I love this. He throws a feast for the prophets of Baal, the priests of Baal.
This is so sneaky.
It is sneaky. It's like, hey, look, Ahab worship Baal a little bit. I'm going to worship Baal a lot. I want everybody together. We're going to kick this thing off right in fashion. And we all go to the temple of Baal and worship there together. And he gets them all together. It's like, now look around you, make sure there's none of the Lord's people here. You see anybody?
Yep.
And they're like, no, I think it's just all us, boss. Like, all right, kill them. Basically how that went down. He had the guys stationed outside. He said, if anybody gets by you, then it's your life or theirs. And he does a lot of good for the nation. I mean, he does some good stuff. They still, though, they cannot get away from the very beginning.
Yep. Those golden calves.
The golden calves that are set up and everything he did to reroute the northern kingdom to a new way of religion is just still happening. He demolished the sacred pillars and the Baal and the temple and the Baal people. And this was funny. They used the temple of Baal as a porta potty.
Yep.
I don't know, as a latrine. It become the new bathroom. Yeah, public restrooms. That's it.
Yep.
Everybody come out here and just wet on it. That's not accidental.
No, it's not.
Like this is you got to drop it right here.
That's where Lord of the Flies actually came from, probably.
Oh, I had not thought about that.
I didn't really put it together until just now.
Oh man,
but I can imagine that place is full of flies.
But yeah. So still, Jeroboam's sin is still plaguing the people. So even with Jehu and all the good he did, there was still a lot of meat left on the bone that he didn't do. And, you know, when you read this, at least when I read this, I'm always rooting for somebody to get it right, you know. And he did a lot of good. And so I'm grateful for this guy historically, but he still left a lot undone.
Well, and I think his willingness to obey the Lord in what he was tasked with allowed the Northern Kingdom to last a little longer than they would have because, we did see that it was getting pretty bad. Yeah.
It was he was part of the pause.
Yep. And so the Lord allowed him to have 4 generations that ruled.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, and even though, and I read that too, I was like, even though he still did not get it right, he was still allowing them to do still extreme wickedness. They totally violated the law. I mean, that God gave them at Sinai, the big deal stuff, they're still violating it.
Yeah.
And yet God honors this guy because he had turned back the clock so far, even still. Didn't get it all the way back, but he did a lot of good. And so I love the fact that God still honored him in that way. Chapter 11, so Jehu kills the southern kingdom's king, and that king's mother saw that her son was dead and killed all her other sons.
Yeah, and now she's like acting queen.
So she put herself on the throne by destroying the king's family, all of her children.
Yep.
This is a new low. We keep seeing each one is worse than one before, but this is a new low for the southern kingdom for sure. This is one of the lowest points thus far.
Right.
And but obviously one of them was hid. Joash was hid away for 6 years. They hid this kid in the temple. It was like, hey, can I go outside and play? Not today.
No.
Oh man, nobody thinks about it from that angle, right?
I mean, I would be wondering if, no one probably ever went to the temple.
Okay. Had the joint to himself. All right. Like you can play anywhere you want to in here.
Yeah.
Out there, maybe in the courtyard at night. So 7th year, they make him king, kill his mother. She had to go.
Yeah, this is kind of like the priest doing the revolution here.
Yeah, Jehoiada.
Yep.
And
I like him.
he's a good dude. He does a good job. And so they see a revival here.
Yeah.
And Joash is great. Became king at 7 years old, and he's all about it. He wants to restore the temple now. So he gives them all the money that he has. Like, hey, let's fix the temple up. The thing's, probably it's broken up because he lived there for 7 years as a kid, and I can tell you what kids do to things, right?
Yeah. He was 7 years old when he became king. So how long before he was like, we need to fix this place up?
Yeah, right. You
think he immediately instated as king and was like, you know what? We probably should fix all that.
maybe he was 12. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Let's go with that. I don't know. We're just guessing at it now. But they didn't do it. And so he'd give them all this money to do it. They didn't do it. And so finally he's like, what gives, guys? And so it's like the age of 30, no recovery had been done.
Right.
This damage was still there. And so 23 years later, well, let's say he did it at 12. We'll just play around with that. That's fine. And so now we got, 18 years later.
Yep.
Still nothing happening. And
that's a long time.
He's like, here's what we're going to do. Nobody's getting paid around here. You're not getting any money. You're not getting any money. You're not getting any money. Whatever comes in goes to this guy. He's going to fix the temple. And that's basically how they set it up.
Yep.
And I like that. I think we should do this with Congress.
Okay.
We've got some broken stuff, right? It's not getting fixed.
I'm so glad this turned into this.
It's been so many years. We've been giving money to this project that's not really working. It's not being fixed. It's not good.
None of y'all getting paid around here.
So how about this? Nobody's getting paid until it gets fixed. And it's like everything that comes in is going to go to somebody else that's actually going to do some work for us. I don't know. I liked it a lot, actually. I'm like, this. I can see where this would work. And so
it did work.
And it did work.
He died kind of early, 47.
Yeah.
Because the servants conspired against him, and it made me sad because he was a good king.
He was a good king. And so here's where I don't know. I get so conflicted with some of this because it gets on me sometimes. I keep reading everybody end of their story is always the same. It's like, it's not so great. Well, he dies early, but he doesn't die in compromise.
That's true.
And I'm like, you know what? Maybe this was God's protection over him.
Yeah.
Maybe if he lived another 20 years, it would have been, just like everybody else. Seemed like toward the end, they tend to start compromising. In the 23rd year of the reign of Judah's king Joash, son of Ahaziah, Jehu's son Jehoahaz became king over Israel. He reigned in Samaria for 17 years. And guess what he did?
Evil. We're not moving anywhere.
And the Lord was furious with Israel and handed them over to the king of Syria.
Yep.
And
that's coming back into play.
And so then this king that was so bad asked for mercy, and the Lord responded favorably. And again, there's just so much hope in that.
Yeah.
He's messed up bad. God's upset, and he's suffering for his sins, and he asks for mercy, and God responds to it.
Yeah.
Because that is God's nature.
Well, and that's what Samuel was telling Israel, right before Saul became king. And, you're going to mess up, but if you ask the Lord, he will hear you. And so they are actually doing this now.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see that the Lord is faithful to his word and to his people.
But he was almost left with nothing. King of Syria had destroyed the troops down to 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 soldiers. Out of 10 tribes, this is what they've got left.
Yeah.
Wowzers. How the mighty have fallen. He passed away and was buried in Samaria. His son Jehoash replaced him, which I'm pretty sure we've read that name somewhere else. I don't know. Joash, Jehoash, Jehoahaz.
Yeah.
It's like,
Jehoash is the same as Joash, like the names. So you can just use them interchangeably.
And I will.
Yeah.
They're trying to confuse us now.
Right.
It's not only is that we got the same names in different kingdoms and different lineages, but then they spell them differently at different places. It's like, okay.
Well, guess what Jehoash did? Evil.
Oh, my goodness. We didn't see that coming.
No, we didn't.
For me, this particular chapter kind of culminates here with the death of Elisha, has been the main takeaway.
Yep.
And he had a terminal illness, and he dies from it. I don't know what to do with that. Here's the guy that healed all these people of all their illnesses, and he's dying of an illness. And, God is sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do with it. It's...
And I would imagine his faith was not wavered.
No. But here's what is interesting. King Jehoash of Israel went down to visit him because he was sick. And he wept before him and said, my father, the chariot and horsemen of Israel. And there is a humbleness in this guy that is rare in the northern kings for sure. And so, Elijah still prophesying, tells him what to do. And Elisha died and was buried. And Moabite raiding parties invaded the land and began the beginning of the year. One day, some men were burying a man when they spotted these raiding parties. So just threw the dead man into Elisha's tomb. And when the body touches Elisha's bones, the dead man came back to life and stood on his feet. The very first pet cemetery.
Right. Hazael of Syria oppressed Israel throughout Jehoahaz's reign. But the Lord had mercy on them and had pity on them. He extended his favor on them because of the promise he had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's what I was talking about earlier. He has been unwilling to destroy them or remove them from his presence to this very day. And I was thinking, that still applies. He still has people that are following him to this very day. And it's because of his faithful love. And, you even talked about it on Sunday. God's steadfast love is unfailing and never changing. Yeah. And so we get to celebrate that because of who he is. It's not because of anything that we've done, especially in their context, they were doing everything wrong.
Yeah.
But God was still faithful to them. And so that is encouraging to me. And I think it should be encouraging for all of us.
Amen. Well, that's
there
what
it is.
Come back next week. We'll talk about some more stuff.